Burnout is rooted in our 3 critical relationships, some of them. Number 1, your relationship with yourself. That includes your past identity, thoughts of yourself, experience, etc. Then also your relationship with your significant other or those closest to you. It could be a close confidant, it could be best friend, it could be boyfriend, husband, whatever. And number 3 is work and society. It's the 3 of them because I had worked on work. I had moved. I had replanted myself into a healthier position, like work environment. I had worked on myself, but that 3rd piece was missing. And I use the analogy of a stool. A stool needs at least 3 legs to support itself, just like these tripods. They need 3 legs.
Yes.
If just one of these legs is weak or broken, what happens?
It's gonna fall over.
It falls over, and that's what happens in our lives.
Yes. So that's a great analogy.
Right? So that's the truth.
Yeah.
Everyone I've met who experienced burnout, if I examined those 3 critical relationships, 1, if not more, were fractured or broken. And that's why in so many studies, it seems like 80% of people are being burnt out. It's in every industry. It could be teachers, administrators, doctors, lawyers, nursing. It's everyone.
Yes.
So are you going to tell me it's just a job? No, because we all have to work to make income to feed our families. It's more than that. It's because as a society, we have lost the foundation, and that is strong relationships.
Welcome to the Flourishing Podcast. I'm Rosalind Fung, transformational leadership and business coach, former psychologist, spiritual guide, and flourishing workplace trainer and facilitator, as well as TEDx speaker. And speaking of which, I actually have my friend, Dr. Tomi Mitchell, who was the only other fellow Canadian there at my TEDx talk, which is at TEDx ISU, Idaho State University. So we hit it off right away.
Yes.
And I said, she lives in Calgary. So I was like, you need to come on our podcast because I would love to have you speak more about your topic on burnout. So if you are like, yes, I am starting to burn out. I am burnt out. I have burnt out. I know somebody that burnt out. Share this episode. This is absolutely for you. Now, before I formally introduce Dr. Tomi, I also want to just share our special journey and meeting at TEDx ISU. It was so incredible.
It was an honor. It was to be picked.
Yes.
Only 3% of those who applied got in. So that is amazing. And to meet a fellow Canadian and someone from Alberta.
Yeah, right?
Who used to live in Calgary, born and raised.
Yeah.
So that's really good.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, just born, but I was raised in Edmonton.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Born is good enough.
My husband jokes, he's like, I can't believe I married a Calgarian. We have a joke around about Calgarians and Edmontonians being rivaled, but we all love each other. Yes. So anyway, let me talk a little bit about Dr. Tomi Mitchell's actual professional bio, because I feel like if I didn't read this, I wouldn't do it any justice. You are one impressive lady. All right. So Dr. Tomi Mitchell is a board certified family physician and certified health and wellness coach with extensive experience in both clinical practice and holistic well-being. As an acclaimed international keynote speaker and a passionate advocate for mental health and physician well-being, she leverages over a decade of private practice experience to drive meaningful change. Dr. Mitchell is the founder of Holistic Wellness Strategies, where she empowers individuals through comprehensive, evidence-based approaches to well-being. Her career is dedicated to transforming lives by addressing personal challenges and enhancing relationships with practical holistic strategies. Her commitment to mental health, burnout prevention, is evident through her role as an executive contributor to Brains Magazine and the host of the Mental Health and Wellness Show podcast. Through her podcast, Dr. Mitchell explores topics related to mental fitness and stress reduction, which we will get further into today, helping audiences achieve sustainable productivity while avoiding burnout. She also is an author of, this is the best name ever, The Soul-Sucking, Energy-Draining Life of a Physician. Like, wow, I can't wait to read this book. We have a story, and I can't wait to have you share the part of your story here. So welcome. I'm so glad that you're here, Dr. Tomi.
Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. Well, why don't we start with your story?
Yes, my story. I have so many stories because it didn't just come up, out of the blue. Wow. I'm a physician, obviously. I'm a first generation Canadian. We were immigrants to Canada.
From
Nigeria, but then born there, like you, born in Calgary, but raised in England, and then moved to Canada, Newfoundland. Those who don't know, it's very different from out here.
Yes.
And then moved in the middle Saskatchewan, Alberta, some US, and I came back here. So all over the place. And, as immigrant families, we're often told to work hard, at least my family.
Yeah.
It was like, the messaging was,
Absolutely.
you must work 10 times harder than your peers in order to be good. And fortunately or unfortunately, your value was often associated with your accomplishments, which is positive, but it can also have negative consequences.
Yes. You and I had compared notes for sure when we went for dinner after TEDx. And we were like, oh, yep. High achieving, and put our value into that.
Yeah. So it was like my life was a petri dish and I was a science experiment. That's the only way I can really describe it. So career as a physician, I love medicine. From the beginning, I wanted this holistic practice, but I was placed in a system that was challenging, that had significant unrealistic expectations on a physician. And that's part of where the title came, the soul-sucking, energy-drained life of physician, how to live a life of service without losing oneself. And then, like many of us, I had an epiphany in 2020. Well, it's more like I hit the wall and crashed. But anyway, I finally listened to my body screaming at me, telling me, stop, slow down, because up until this point, I'd never taken a break.
Okay, we need to talk about how long into your practice. Like how many years are we talking about?
So this was a decade in my practice. Okay?
Oh my gosh.
With my children, I'd been back to work within a week for both of them.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And that year, my baby had a near-death experience. Like I had to do CPR on her. And then I almost passed away into 2020. So 2020 was a rough one.
Wow.
But I paused. I took a break and took time to heal and try to understand why I was here and how come I'm living this life that does not feel right, that feels very heavy, unfulfilled. Everyone else seems to be living, smiling, breathing. I'm helping others, but I'm dying inside. Right. And I had to ask myself some critical questions.
Yeah. And you were saying you were forced to because was it that you got sick or was it
I was done. I got
2020 and the pandemic?
2020 pandemic, but then I think it was a workplace, it was a workplace stressor. And I just like, you know what? I'm done. I remember I was not in the office and a patient complained about me not being available for her. And she's like, I don't get to see you, I'm going to report you. And I'm thinking, I'm like, we're human too. I just had a baby less than a year ago and I'm trying to do some work. I can't be always available. Plus everything else.
Absolutely.
I just got to the point where I felt like if I heard my name one more time, I was going to snap. And to give context to my story, I was the owner of the medical center. It wasn't just like I was working there. No, I was the owner. I was responsible for employees and other people renting the building and staffing, plus being a doctor. So any of you business owners or those of you in professions and you own it, you see that there's many layers. And physicians who own practices, whether in Canada or US, they say the same thing. The business side can be hard.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Business is hard.
Business is hard.
Business is a journey. And I always say it's a personal and spiritual development journey.
Oh, yes, for sure.
At some point, it's going to be like testing us and really like triggering us. And we have to look at what is that really about?
Yes.
What is that really about? Because every event is neutral until you put meaning to it.
Oh, yes.
And we get that from our belief system.
100%.
Yeah. And so tell us what happened in that pause for you.
So I paused and it was so weird being home and thinking I don't have to go to work. Like I took short-term leave and I got into yoga.
and this was your first I'm laughing because your face is like I've never done yoga.
I haven't. And I remember them telling you to like think of nothing. And my brain's
how
like,
do you do that?
I'm thinking, okay, I have a lot of work to do. Okay. And also I was still nursing a baby at that time. And I was also tired. And I remember many a times in yoga, I would fall asleep on the mat because they'll be like, do a pose. It's warm. You're comfortable.
Oh,
you're
absolutely.
sleep deprived mother with 2 kids, 2 and under.
And it's relaxing.
And you know what? They were very supportive. So that was really wonderful.
Yes.
They weren't like what are you doing? They were very
This must
warm.
have been yin yoga.
I don't know. It was oxygen yoga. Seriously, oxygen. It was hot yoga.
Oh, wow.
A mixture of high intensity workouts, some classes, and some of them were like stretching and doing things my body didn't know it could do. But I mean, that was good because that taught me to pause and not think about my 1,002 responsibilities.
Yes.
And then before that, COVID happened, the world shut down, and I'm like, okay, I have a 4-month-old, I have 2 businesses, can't work in either one of them because of these rules.
Yeah.
I have bills. I have full-time bills, but part-time pay.
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
Yeah.
I know many of you can relate to that.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to do this. I went into coaching. I took a training certification over the next, I think it was a year and a half. I took 2 actually.
Yes.
I'm kind of a nerd. I start
Love
one,
it.
then
I'm
I go
the nerd with you.
like
I'm a
total
seeker,
nerded out.
yes,
Yeah.
lifetime learner.
Yeah. So like what really got me was the transformational coaching process and just how it applied to everyday life, my patients and myself. But I kept on asking myself, okay, what needs to change? And for me, it was many things need to change. But the easiest one was work. Do you know why? Because that's someone else.
Yes.
Partially. That's out there.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But sometimes our greatest act of self-care is knowing when to let go.
1,000%.
Right?
Let's say that again.
Yes. Sometimes our greatest act of self-care is knowing when to let go. Right? So often we hold on to things because it's our identity or people expect it of us.
Yes.
You know, at that point, my practice had like 10,000 patients and it had been there for a decade and basically oftentimes open 7 days a week. So you can imagine it was well known and busy, but I was like, no, this does not feel right. You know, I can't work in a place where I have to be on call 24/7 or I have to be always plugged in.
Yes.
Those were the rules. So that was a change, which was great. But the burnout, the overwhelm continued. So I had to dig deeper. The second piece was myself. Obviously, as I'm a patient, we're all patients.
Yeah.
And they say doctors can be the worst patients. I pride myself on being a good patient because when the doctor's like, you're fine. I'm like, no, I'm not. This is wrong. And then they finally believe me. So anyway, I'm a good patient, just so you know. Hypochondriac, maybe. But it kept me alive and my children. So, you know, looking inwardly at myself, seeing how my journey through life had impacted where I was today, those beliefs, identities, you know, past traumas, all of that stuff working through. And that took work. Like if anyone thinks it's going to be 3 sessions of counseling or coaching, I'm sorry, you are grossly mistaken.
Yes.
I'm still on that journey. It's a lifelong
We all are.
journey.
It never ends.
It never ends.
The journey home never ends.
Exactly. So that was looking within.
Yes.
And then when I did that and started working on myself, communication skills, boundaries, just so many things, it really helped. But guess what? That nagging exhaustion was still creeping in. I found myself feeling, quote unquote, burnt out. So I've dealt with the work because the world says burnout is a work phenomenon. I beg to differ. We'll get to that. I was dealing with myself, but then I had to address the elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room was my personal relationship with my partner. Yes, because it was on life support. And I realized until I made a definitive decision about that and did something, I'm going to continue to feel burnt out.
It's an energy drain.
It's an energy drain.
Yes.
So, you know, in the TEDx, I talked about burnout is not just a work experience. It is so much more than that.
Absolutely.
Burnout is rooted in our 3 critical relationships, some of them. Number 1, your relationship with yourself. That includes your past identity, you know, thoughts of yourself, experience, etc. Then also your relationship with your significant other or those closest to you. It could be a close confidant. It could be best friend. It could be boyfriend, husband, whatever, right? Yes. And number 3 is work and society. So it's the three of them, because I had worked on work. I had moved. I had replanted myself into a healthier position, like work environment. I had worked on myself, but that third piece was missing. And I use the analogy of a stool. A stool needs at least 3 legs to support itself, just like these tripods that we're speaking into. They need 3 legs.
Yes.
If just one of these legs is weak or broken, what happens?
It's going to fall over.
It falls over. And that's what happens in our lives.
Yes.
So
that's a great analogy.
Right? So that's the truth.
Yeah.
We got to stop sugarcoating stuff. Because let me tell you, during that pandemic, the rate of like separations, relationship stresses, and so many other things, even domestic violence, and that's horrible, skyrocketed.
Yes.
During the pandemic, people saw how supportive or unsupportive their partners were.
Yes.
Especially when you had 2 working individuals, perhaps they both had to work from home, raising young children, but clearly the work never ended for one, and the other one, perhaps it ended when they, clocked out. And people started talking about it.
Yes.
Which is good. But these things were always happening before. It's just that they were put in this petri dish that accelerated the inevitable.
There's a petri dish.
Right? It was a science experiment. Everyone I've met who experienced burnout, if I examined those 3 critical relationships, 1, if not more, were fractured or broken. And that's why in so many studies, it seems like 80% of people are being burnt out. It's in every industry. It could be teachers, administrators, doctors, lawyers, nursing. It's everyone.
Yes.
So are you going to tell me it's just a job? No, because we all have to work to make income to feed our families. It's more than that. It's because as a society, we have lost the foundation, and that is strong relationships. And actually, perhaps we never even had it in before. It's just that now life is more complicated. Yes. Remember the stool analogy. A stool can only support so much. Every stool is rated. Might be 200 pounds, 300 pounds. Life was simple before. Now it's complicated.
There's a lot more factors.
There's more factors. Yes. So there's more weight.
Yes.
So if the legs are not as strong, they're not going to be able to support it. Do you see what I mean?
I get what you're putting down. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So it doesn't. So what I'm challenging people to do is look at things the way society hasn't truly looked at. Because let's be real, the relationship with yourself includes your mental fitness, your mental health, your thoughts.
Yes.
How many people are afraid to be alone in the dark? Or one of the speakers at TEDx, go in the woods by themselves.
Yes.
Be there with their thoughts. Most people
are running away
They're
from that.
running away.
And what that looks like is numbing themselves.
Yes.
In social media.
Yes.
It could be numbing themselves by taking all these pleasure holidays, going to concerts, but you're running away. Like it's like, or whatever addictions there are that are really unhealthy, right?
Yes.
Food, drinking, all of that stuff that we do know.
Exactly.
And I would say, like, for myself, my journey of coming home to myself, because I had a very similar one around discovering, everything on the outside of my life looked completely perfect.
Oh yeah, high achievers.
Right? Yep. And yet I felt like there was this unfulfilling like hole inside. I'm like, what am I missing? So I was playing a game I could never win. And it's like, okay, maybe I got to do this next thing, maybe this next thing. And so fast forward, I realized I was putting my value in my doingness rather than my beingness. And my doingness was never enough. And so, of course, because we're onion layers, I remember probably around 2019. And I noticed that I had this habit of like going out every Friday. And if I didn't, I would feel really anxious, like out with friends.
Yes.
And I'm like, what is that about? So I forced myself because I'm like, there's something here that little Rosie, my inner child, is like poking up because there's anxiety here. And I'm like, there's nothing to be anxious about. So what am I running away from within myself?
Exactly.
And so I forced myself to stay home. At first I was like, okay, I'm going to clean a closet or something because then I have something to do. And I just let myself notice what arose. And it was just like, okay, this is really about leaning into self-love even more.
Yes.
Leaning into what does that little girl inside me need?
Exactly.
What does she really need right now? And giving myself that for her.
Yes.
And it was like just quietness, just stillness. And and I deepened my meditation practice. I deepened on purpose, I would do activities alone. I would stay home. So I'm not like surrounded by all these people all the time, because I am an extreme extrovert and you couldn't notice. And, and now I really do feel like I've moved into being an ambivert, which is in between introvert and extrovert. Yes. And I love my me time, like just the quietness. I feel that silence is luxurious.
Yes. Oh, I love it too. Cause like most people were complaining that things were closed. They couldn't go anywhere during that period of time. But for me, I loved it. Like work on myself. Yes. Grow, heal, thrive, be able to be in a place where I'm giving from the overflow or the abundance. Yes. But like speaking of mental health, you look at the boomer generation and before, did they talk about their feelings or their mental health? No. There's
such a stigma around it.
Exactly. So that relationship was never really strengthened. Yes. Society kind of put blinders on it and said, we're not going to talk about it. Yes. Only crazy people talk about it. Yes. And there we go. Yes. So if you don't have a heavy load on the stool, you might be able to balance off the other two. Exactly. But fast forward to modern day age.
Yeah. Here at Flourishing, we really talk about how to thrive in all areas of your life, because that is really important. And even when we go into work with different organizations, one of the things that I really notice, male and even men, one of their biggest takeaways is, I'm not caring enough for myself. Yes. Like out of all the things that we coach people on and train people on, and whether it's like navigating change in the workplace to workplace wellness and team culture, it's so interesting that one of the biggest things that still stands out is I'm not taking enough time for myself. Exactly. And then the burnout is really huge. Exactly. And we are the foundation of this. Yes. This 3 relationships. Yes. Number 1. Okay. And if that's not there, good luck building a house on it, because guess what? Storms will come, hurricanes will come, rain will come. That foundation will eventually crack. And when it does, it will be sudden. And you'll be like, how did that happen? Well, it's been happening under the ground. Yes. You haven't paid attention to it. Yes. You've ignored it as a society. Yes. And now you're dealing with it. Yes. Yeah. It'll just get louder and louder and louder until it hits you with a 2x4. Oh, yeah. Exactly. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. My pleasure. Your wisdom. In closing, could you share any words of wisdom for our listeners, those who are really like feeling, okay, I'm really resonating with this. I get it. Here's another sign. Here's another confirmation that self-care, is really important. It is very important. Oh, those 3 legs. I hope that you are also taking that away, like to think about that stool analogy. I think that's really, really powerful. Thank you. And I'm curious, what would you like to leave our audience with? I want to leave you with hope and realize that there are tools to help you grow and thrive, but you have to be willing and open. Okay? That's just the truth. So absolutely. No one can change anyone until you want to change. You have to want to change. Accountability. And when you're ready to change, there's great resources here. Myself. Yes. You can reach out and get the help you need so you can truly thrive while you grow and learn and live and leave an impact on this world. Leave a legacy. That's really why I'm doing this. Yes. So my children have a better world to live in, and others' children have a better world to live in. Yes, when we heal ourselves, we heal 7 generations forward and 7 generations back. Exactly. Yes. Imagine if our leaders were healed. They weren't making choices born out of trauma. Yes. That's another story entirely. But imagine. Yes, we would be living in a different world. We live in a very kumbaya world. Organizations would be thriving differently. Yes. And I mean, that's why we're passionate about doing what we want 100%. To do, and we do. So thank you. And where can our audience find you? Yeah. So holisticwellnessstrategies.com, holistic with an H, or just Google Dr. Tomi Mitchell. That's my handle for Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn is where I'm most active. Perfect. Yeah. That's awesome. So good. I'm so happy to have you here. My pleasure. And thank you so much for sharing your story and your value with us today. Thank you very much. And thanks everyone for listening. Amazing. And for those of you who haven't subscribed to our channel, please do so and give us a share. Tell us in the comments what your biggest takeaways are, and do go visit www.flourishingworkplace.com and certifiedflourishingcoaches.com. Thank you. I'm Rosalind Fung, and we will see you on the next one.